Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining today's call. I want to take a moment to run through a couple of things. So firstly, during today's webinar, we're going to discuss how organizations can effortlessly manage, analyze, and protect their data. So we're going to be focusing on the automation opportunity, building secure data and ecosystem. My name's Kevin Davis, and today I'm joined by two of our best-in-class partners, Igor Giffrin from Cribl and Paul Daigle from Elastic. So I'll give each of them a few minutes to introduce themselves. Igor, pass it over to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Igor Giffrin. I'm a principal solutions engineer at Cribl. And for anyone who's not familiar with Cribl, so we are the data agent engine for IT and security used by 43 out of 100 Fortune 100 companies. From Cribl portfolio perspective, we have Stream, which is data pipeline, Cribl Edge, which is our universal agent, Cribl Search, which is search in place with schema on need, and finally Cribl Lake, which is low cost, easy to manage object storage based data lake. And we will be focusing primarily on Cribl Stream, which is data pipeline, and it allows organizations like yours to route data, reduce data volume, collect data volume from any security or IT data source, anonymize sensitive information, enrich data with context, and finally replay data from the least expensive storage to security analytics or other IT analytics tool like Elastic Security. Paul?
Thanks, Igor. So Paul Daigle here. I'm a principal solutions architect based out of the Houston, Texas area. For those that are not familiar with Elastic, Elastic is one of the leading platforms for search-powered solutions. And ultimately, we're helping everyone, whether it's organizations, that organization's employees, or even their own customers, help them ultimately find what they need faster, ultimately keeping a lot of the applications running smoothly. And what we're going to be mainly focusing on, obviously, is protecting against cyber threats. Our mission here at Elastic has always been about finding answers that matter the most, or creating relevancy out of the data that you may be, having to go through. And it's backed by over 3,000 employees worldwide. So we have a variety of locations that we support customers from all over the place. And one of the things that is really awesome about this is that it's one platform, one SKU, that covers all of this, whether it's search or it's going into observability or even into security. And Igor was mentioning, today's focus is really going to be about our integration with all of our partners here at Hines and Cribl from a security perspective. Kevin?
Awesome. Thank you, Igor. Thank you, Paul. My name is Kevin Davis. I'm the Senior Manager of Solutions Engineering here at Tynes. And for anyone that's not familiar, Tynes helps you build, run, and monitor your most critical workflows within your organization. All of that is driven via APIs, where we're going to integrate with tools like Elastic, like Cribl, to help you streamline any of the manual, repetitive processes that you have in place. So with that, we'll dive into the agenda for today. So we're going to run through some of the top security challenges, actionable ways to overcome any potential blockers, what automation best practices look like, and then we'll run through a demo where we're going to utilize Cribl, Elastic, and Tynes working together and show that workflow running in action for you. And then at the end, we'll share any additional resources, blog posts, the actual automation that we'll work through today. And then that way, everyone has the ability to access that, use it, and then we'll leave plenty of time for questions from the audience as well. So with that, we'll dive into what are the top challenges facing security teams today. So one of the big ones is around detection and alerting. We also have data usability and privacy. And we also have scalability and flexibility. So within the detection and alerting concept, a lot of that's focused around the ability to not just create the automations, but create automations that anybody can either use or take advantage of. A lot of the legacy source systems that we see out in the marketplace today, they're very Python driven, very code heavy. And with Tynes' low code, no code approach, we're helping organizations speed up that time to delivery on the automations and getting workflows set up where you can have an automation quickly detect and help sift through any of the alerting noise that might be out there. Within the data visibility and privacy bucket, we're focused on things that are helping users level up and bubble up any of that relevant information. Some of the surveys that we recently done with some of the leading CISOs in the market is trying to understand and help them realize what the AI impact can potentially be on security teams. We're also helping global organizations be aware of and stay in compliance with regulatory and data privacy laws, things like GDPR and then the CAN-SPAM Act. And if we look at scalability and flexibility, it's the ability to work with any API, any tool that you have in your tech stack today, and making them work more efficiently together. And that's where Tynes really works as an integrator versus just an integration point. Or any of these disparate tools that you have in your tech stack today, Tynes will be able to connect into those, receive, push data back and forth between the different systems, and then make it available and accessible to anybody, not just security, but IT teams, HR, finance, and anyone else beyond the security organization within that company. Paul, Igor, I'd love to hear your thoughts on any of these challenges and how you're seeing these three areas play out with customers that you work with today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. I will jump in. So with automation and analytics tools like Tynes and Elastic, so there are some basic challenges with data itself. The cleaner the data, the easier it is to analyze it and automate on it. And that's where just making sure that the data is ingested in a way that is the easiest and cleaned up, made consistent, potentially when mapped to a common schema like Elastic Common Schema. So all that significantly simplifies the detections, the automation, and analytics. Another thing is with sensitive data, anyone who has sensitive data, it's definitely potentially becomes a challenge with any kind of analysis or automation. And that's where data, in many cases, needs to be cleaned up, obfuscated, encrypted, hashed, anonymized in any other way before it can be safely analyzed and automated on. Paul?
Yeah, thanks, Igor. So, from our perspective, whenever it comes to detection and alerting, it's one thing, obviously, to have a platform that gives you not only visibility to the data like that's coming in from Cribl, but taking that a step further and thinking beyond thresholds or simple logic, when it comes to detection. And I understand that a lot of folks have, maybe heard of, the machine learning type of detections that are out there. But one of the things that we did earlier this year is we surveyed a vast majority of global, perspective of our IT. And when it comes to things like leveraging things to go to that next level, go to that generative AI for detection and alerting, they obviously, almost all of our respondents realized that there's transformative potential and opportunity there to have the organization take a complete leapfrog forward with their information that they're able to detect out of and alert on. But reality is that they're still having a lot of challenges with this chaotic sense of data, maybe not being exactly what they expect, or even having some of the search challenges. Even, there's, of course, just like what you called out earlier about privacy and some of the security regulations, especially in some of the markets. To me, what it's saying more than anything is that people are looking for this generative AI to help them, but ultimately not harm. And where we are seeing this is ultimately working in conjunction with a lot of the automation so that we get faster time to detection and remediation. So while not all scenarios are going to call for a generative AI type of detection, what we're really getting down to is when you actually work together with good data hygiene, meaning good quality, good correct entities, information that's not, irrelevant, but relevant for what I'm trying to detect inside of my data. And then you combine that with the automation from Tines, ultimately you're going to get some really good, not only clean investigations, but quicker time to remediation and resolution. Kevin?
Absolutely. And that'll be one of the things that we focus on during the demo aspect of today's presentation, is with all of that data hygiene going on, the real-time information coming in, and then the way that you can action and surface that information up. So it's actionable when you're getting that alert, but also providing all the different context around the detection with that, visibility, and then scaling that out to multiple organizations, multiple users within the company. Awesome. Now that we've taken a look at some of the biggest challenges that many teams, many organizations are facing, the endless tools that are out there, I'd love to discuss how we can solve those challenges head on, and what solutions do our products offer.
All right. So I'm going to step in here and talk about this from the detection and alerting perspective from Elastic. For those that are not familiar with Elastic Security, Elastic Security is going to give you a diligent way to process that incoming data from our partners at Cribl. Ultimately, what it's going to do is utilize both machine learning, like I talked about around the algorithms, but a generative AI detection capability that helps you streamline your detections for threats, monitor malicious activities, and ultimately identify a lot of those anomalies in both assets and user accounts. With these alerts being generated from various detections, Elastic Security is going to give you the capability where analysts can triage and utilize generative AI to ultimately stitch together an attack. We call it attack discovery. And so with that, what it does is it facilitates remediation and mitigation response through our integration with Tines. So Igor, at Cribl, you help organizations manage their data. We've been talking about that, but I'm kind of interested. Can you show how organizations can improve data privacy and ultimately, the usability with automation?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Paul. I started talking about a Cribl product called Cribl Stream, and that's where the convenience of data processing, pulling data from repositories with data that was stored for long-term retention is coming from. So with Cribl Replay, which is part of Cribl Stream functionality, you can tap into those massive, voluminous data repositories, maybe something that never was ingested into analytics tools or just aged out from those analytics tools. So you can replay that data back on demand during automation tasks, or even bring them back into Elastic Security. Other things is, I mentioned briefly that data hygiene, and Paul mentioned it multiple times, as well as Kevin. So data hygiene is very important, just because for detection, for automation, the more consistent the data across multiple data sources, the easier it is to build automation and analyze that data. So data hygiene can take multiple shapes. The first is just straightforward format, but also just controlling the volume of the data. Not all the data, especially voluminous data sources, is practical to be ingested and analyzed and automated on. Another thing is that context in data, individual events in particular, is very important. So the more context is added to individual events, the easier it is to automate, the easier it is to analyze data. And finally, with privacy. So data privacy is critical, especially in some of the industries. And if you have this capability to anonymize data, obfuscate data, it makes it so much easier to get that data into your analytics tools and automate upon. And all that is available with a solution like Cribl Stream. Kevin, back to you.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll cover the scalability and the flexibility piece. One of the things we always talk to organizations about is kind of when you're evaluating a source solution or an automation platform like Tines, is the ability to integrate with any API. Most tools, if not every tool nowadays has an API that's available where we can pull data in, make updates, and work with various data structures as that comes into the Tines platform. And really what we're trying to get across is the ease of use, but also the ability to build and build fast, whether it's starting with a blank storyboard and starting to wireframe out what that process might look like that you've drawn out on a whiteboard. We also have a number of pre-built workflows ready to go within our Tines story library. In there's about 800 pre-configured automations that users can take advantage of. 90% of the time, they'll get you to where you need to go. But with a lot of the pre-built action templates that Tines has, with a lot of the best practice, well-known tools that are out there, we have the ability to swap those, actions out, update the tool that we want to make requests to, and then continue on and building or iterating on that automation that's available. And then the capability to bring additional people into the loop. It's oftentimes brought to us where it'd be amazing to automate this process, but we also want to extend the automation beyond that security IT team. That's where things like Tines pages or Tines cases can come in. They can help where different users can interact with that Tines page, kick off a request to have access to a certain tool or application for some period of time, or even if it's just onboarding and offboarding employees during the life cycle of their tenure in an organization. And again, it can be leveraged by all teams. You don't need a Python or developer background to interact and build these Tines automations. Rather, you can jump in, utilize things like our Tines University, the documentation page, webinars, and boot camps that we run to get up to speed and start working with and building those Tines stories. So we look at some of the automation best practices that are out there, and we've talked a lot about the challenges and the use case, but now I really want to talk about kind of what the future and what that landscape looks like as you're making a switch from a legacy SOAR over to a solution like Tines. So we think about this in kind of four main areas, and Igor and Paul, I'd love to get your feedback on some customer proof points and where you've seen this be successful. But if we look at things like the assessment and the planning phase, where you're starting to understand exactly what's in your environment, defining the objectives and targets that you want to hit, and then starting to go ahead and scope out what that work might be. And then in preparation, we're setting things up, whether it's the internal environment, the Tines platform, start working with all of those disparate systems to have data come in. And then from there, start planning and migrating and doing that execution on the migration plan, configuring credentials, converting playbooks, testing, validating those workflows. And then from there, we're moving into that iteration and then extension of the Tines platform and all the other platforms to start taking advantage of those best practices with automation. Paul, Igor, what best practices have you seen from your customers who are on this journey today?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. I will start. So from what we see at Cribl, there's a couple of things, and also I will just borrow some from my previous experience working with automation solutions. So one of the first things is just looking at what the teams do on a regular basis. Some routine tasks, some menial tasks that nobody enjoys, but they are very repetitive. So most of you, if you just think about what you typically do throughout the day, most likely you'll be able to identify one or two tasks that can be immediately automated. Second thing is just keeping it simple, because especially with legacy automation tools, things get complicated very quickly. And even though someone can put it together, it's almost impossible to maintain. With Tines, just from my personal experience, just putting a story together is very easy. But what's more important is that anybody else can maintain that story after it's created. So again, from operational cost perspective, from complexity, those things are simplified. So keep it simple. Use Tines just, again, for automation, just because it becomes sustainable if you put this together and you have to hand it over to somebody else to maintain. Paul?
Yeah, I think I'll even echo a little bit of the sentiment there that Igor had, because Igor and I actually used to work with a very similar SOAR automation company as well. And I can say there was a variety of things that would come up, and one of them in particular, like Igor was mentioning, it's just, people getting their organization to focus around what is your workflow, what does it look like, and what ultimately are you wanting to automate. It's one thing to have a goal. I've worked with various organizations that have come and spoke with me before, or, consulted with me around, I want to get 25 or 30 or 40% automation out of my business, but they don't know their workflow, let's say end to end, or the standard, the norm. So a lot of that stuff would take a lot of time. You would spend upwards of 50% of the time just trying to get what exactly do you want to workflow through. I think one of the things that I would say is that Tynes here is bringing a huge amount of value with bringing over 800 out of the box, ready to go stories and templates that, a lot of people could maybe point, click, and start with a foundation and grow from. Second to that, of course, was always about testing and iterating. Many of them would implement it, and I know that there's lots of organizations who believe in testing in production, which is always scary, but they think, well, automation is not that big of a deal. Why would I need to go into a test environment? Well, simply because when you're automating something that makes decisions against any of your security policies that include taking action, pivoting and taking action into the detection, that requires making sure that it mimics or it produces the same results that your security practitioners do on a daily basis when they're executing it manually. Just attacking those kind of areas to me, and making sure that we've got good, smooth rollouts that align with your ultimate goals, truly your goals around automation, is some of the biggest things that any organization or any of the customers out there can overcome. Kevin?
Awesome. Thank you both. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's a lot of what I think all three companies, when we're working together, really focus on driving home that, okay, what is it we want to automate, and what's going to be the best scenario, working together to support those organizations.
Yeah, and even making sure that you're not realize it's a living thing. It just like everything else in security, nothing remains static. Everything continues to grow over time, right?
Yep, I couldn't agree more. So if we take a look at kind of what an high-level architecture diagram might look like, this is kind of how all three tools, Cribl, Elastic, and Tynes, work together. We have that user interfacing with Elastic, Elastic sending that information off over to Tynes, Tynes making an API call to replay that data from Cribl Stream, and then Cribl Stream going to the object storage data lake and passing that information back to Elastic and the user. So let's dive into a demo and kind of walk through exactly how three of these tools can help you and get everything up and running. So for folks that haven't seen Tynes before, this is the Tynes storyboard. So often you'll be presented with a blank canvas, and that's meant to be done intentionally, where what we like to tell folks is if you can whiteboard it, you can build it and automate within Tynes. All of the configuration, all of the automation, it's always going to be leveraging these 8 atomic actions over on the left-hand side. So different ways to ingest data from Elastic being the webhook. If we want to make decisions, we can utilize things like our trigger action. And then if we wanted to work with all of the data that's coming in, and as we're doing synchronization across other tools that's being sent to us from Cribl, we can use an event transform to do search and replace. In here, we also have a number of pre-built templates. So there's 458 products that we support with over 8,000 of those templates. So if I wanted to search for something like Elastic, I can pull that up and we can start leveraging these different actions here. And if I'm looking to do something with Cribl, I can type Cribl into that search and start leveraging all of those templates that are available as well. Now, this story that we're going to run through today, it's going to go ahead and take in an alert from Elastic. From there, we're going to use that information to create an initial case within Elastic itself. And then further on down, we'll start to do the enrichment gathering and pushing that information back to the Elastic case. We'll create a job in Cribl, and then we'll go ahead and run that replay collection. And then from there, we'll look at what a decision might be for the end user. So if I go ahead and kick this event off, we're going to start to see different bubbles, different things spin within the Tynes storyboard. One thing I like to point out is each one of these bubbles with a number indicates that an event's been received. And events and times are really just structured JSON. It's being passed from one action to the next. We have this information here that was sent to us via the webhook from Elastic from an alert. We're pulling in the information that's available. So things like username, destination IP, port, source, and then further on down, we have the ability to reference additional data. And this becomes important not only as we're building, but as Paul had mentioned, the ability to test and iterate, especially when you're making decisions on certain information. So one quick way to orient yourself is anytime you have an event within Tines, there's a couple of different things that you're typically going to do. You're going to come in, understand what it is that you want to work with. So if we're wanting to work with this command here, we can go ahead, copy the clipboard, and then we'll take that full JSON path, and then we'll be able to reference it. I can pin this event window. So as I'm working and as I'm making updates to my story, I always have the data that I want to work with. Really at that point, it's just understanding what step we want to take, utilizing those 8 atomic actions over on the left-hand side. So in this instance, if I want to use my event transform action and just simply reference the data at this point, the process is always going to be the same. I'm going to connect my action up to the upstream action that has an event. From there, because I copied that JSON field with the value, I don't need to manually type that out. I can simply select all and paste. At that point, I'll be able to drill into the exact JSON path that I'm referencing, have a sample result down here of what the value is I'll be working with. And then at that point, there's a couple of different things that you can do. Now you can select the action that has the event here, and you can simply re-emit that last action with the event that has the information. One of the things I really like about building in the Tines platform, and one of the things that really resonates with a lot of our customers, is that ability to test. So once I go ahead and select this test here, I have one event that I can work with, so I can select that. The beauty is you can also make changes to the event information that you're working with. So while I have this specific command here, but if I want to see how the story might interact or the different branches that might be involved as I'm building this automation story out, I can make modifications to any of these values within the payload that I'm working with. Once I've made those changes, from there you can go ahead and click test, and then that'll give you the information and the value that you were working with and referencing immediately to understand, is this the right value? If I have decision logic in here, for loops, if-else statements, you can understand exactly what type of value is going to be returned, and then the potential path that it would take based on the resulting steps within the workflow. And then at that point, it's really, understanding and changing the name. So we'll call this reference name from Elastic. And then from here, I'll have the ability to work with that and then continue on in the building process within Tines. Further on down, we're using one of the other popular actions that we have, which is this send to story. So for anyone that's familiar with programming, send to story really acts as a parent-child function, essentially, where you can take upstream information like we have here with this Elastic case, the received information from Elastic, the linking, the alert. Here, all we're doing is we're taking that IP information, specifically the destination IP. And because we've already created a story that is doing IP enrichment and analysis, rather than recreating the same branch and the same process across multiple stories, the send to story action allows you to build modularity within the Tines stories that you create. So there's no need to have similar logic redundant across one or many stories. Rather, you can have one story that's doing that, capturing the analysis information, and then from there, populating that and sending it back to the top story that we were just working with. Give that a second to load with my Wi-Fi. And as we continue on, we're doing additional lookups, and we're also making modifications to that case. So if I dive into the recent case that we just created here, which was created about 4 minutes ago within Elastic, here I can start to see all of the information that's been gathered and the information that's been updated within the case. So we can see all the traditional information that Elastic provides. We can also see some callouts and some comments from the Tines admin So we'll see the reporter is the Times admin via the API. We're showing that we've created a specific case. This is the alert that was fired within Elastic. And then here we're doing some lookups on that IP address and providing the map directly in the case itself. Further on, we're capturing additional information and then returning those results from the Cribl replay back into the Times case. And all of that's being done directly in here, where we add those results from the upstream information. And again, as we go through and as we're building within the Times UI, you have the capability to reference all of that upstream data. So there's no need to, save, have multiple tabs open, copy things, put it into, separate clipboard. You can work within the right-hand side to build out the references for the values that you want to work with. And then again, you can pin that information and then start to drill into any of the specific values that are being returned from any of the upstream actions. So one of the things that we hear a lot of is it's awesome that you can automate. It's great that you can take in all of this information from various systems. But one thing we hear a lot about is whether it's with a Times page here under the tools section, or using what we call prompts and then these trigger actions here based on responses provided, is the ability to action and allow folks to either start to remediate or provide resolution to an alert that's come in. So here in this Elastic case, one of the things we've done is use the prompt functionality within the Times platform to initially surface up what actions and next steps are available to the analyst or the end user that's working the case within Elastic. So if they wanted to go ahead and isolate that host, they can go ahead and use this prompt here. Or if they just want to leave the host as is, they can also go ahead and select that prompt. One thing to call out is you'll notice we have this URL that's presented, and kind of to give folks an informative way on how to understand this prompt is it's referencing the action, the event, and then the status. And all of that's configured within the case creation, where you can go ahead and use things like these prompts to define exactly what the action should be and what the label should be for those. And then using that information as you're making decisions. So if I go ahead and click this prompt in the Elastic case, it'll capture this yes. It'll follow this path to isolate that host in the Elastic fleet and then update the comment for that particular case. So we'll go ahead and we'll take that action now. Times knows which path to follow based on a couple of things. So that prompt specifically, the URL and how it's structured is the action. So it's going to be this particular action ID and then the event. So the event that actually generated the prompt within that Elastic case to be taken. And that information is found right here. You'll notice we've already made the comment and updated the Elastic case as well to isolate that host. So as users are interacting with Cribl, with Elastic, and utilizing this prompt functionality within Times, they're able to not only make a decision and action the alert immediately, but they're also able to keep comments and updates real time. So in the event of audit or understanding, from different compliance processes that they have, all of that information is not only being tracked, but it's being tracked and recorded with a timestamp here in this Elastic case, which is even more useful when you're going back and doing retroactives or reviewing, major incidents that may have occurred. Paul, Igor, any additional thoughts or comments that you want to call out within this automation workflow here and what we're all able to do together?
I'll start. So kind of stating the obvious, nowadays, all the products, including Elastic and Cribl, are API-based. So everything that you can think you can do with Elastic and Cribl can be automated, right? So just think about whiteboarding first. The kind of technicalities of how to automate it are pretty straightforward, as Kevin demonstrated here.
Yeah, from my perspective, the one thing working with a lot of security practitioners is, you got to have evidence. You got to have like that information, and regardless of whether you're automating that process or not, it's awesome to have a place to centralize that. So having our case management, populated not only with good clean information that's coming in from the events and from the data that comes from Cribl, but then ultimately Tines helping with a lot of those manual processes and pieces that it's not just isolated, but it's actually integrated in a way that we now have a single place, a workplace that we can work from. It makes it huge, right, in terms of helping our customers and our common organizations out there from a security perspective.
Awesome. Thank you. And yeah, on the topic of customers, looking at the way all of our technologies interact, the value that they provide as a single ecosystem for efficiency within operations, security operations. Igor, any additional top benefits that you see for your customers or customers alike?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see customers basically just struggling with basic things. Everybody has a bunch of sources, a bunch of destinations. There's lots of manual steps. So from Cribl perspective, especially with Cribl Stream, it's almost unthinkable in the modern environment not to have some form of data pipeline between source and destinations and kind of connect all the pieces together. Again, Cribl Stream helps to simplify automation, helps to ship data to Elastic in a much more efficient way, offload massive volumes of data to some very inexpensive data repositories, or even in many cases, just leave some of the voluminous data in place and search it with Cribl Search. So the whole thing kind of from data strategy perspective, data pipeline, data management is a very important thing. But again, it's also like analytics and automation on that data are absolutely crucial.
Yeah. Igor, couldn't agree more. In fact, it's kind of where I was going with, when I think about customer benefiting from the integration between all of us here. From my perspective, obviously, the data that comes in has to be of good quality, has to be relevant. Spending a lot of time, if any customer out there has spent any amount of time with generative AI, the relevancy, the actual entity of that information, that data, and the quality behind it becomes so critical. This is where on that front end, when it's one thing to have detections, it's one thing to even be able to clean up a lot of those detections, leveraging a generative AI. But if I don't have good quality data to do that against, it just garbage produces garbage. And so having that within Elastic, now our detections obviously are not just firing off against that information, but firing off good quality response, good quality information. And ultimately, that's that integration piece that regardless of whether we're using machine learning or some other threshold type detections, or even the generative AI processes, when we hand that off, I'm thinking extending it over into the Tines area, that like the further benefit of getting that evidence back of whatever automation process the customer just worked through. Now I'm getting quicker time to remediation, quicker time through resolving out whatever incident or whatever information. And that, of course, is done within, the Elastic platform through that case management that we saw. All of this, obviously, leveraging that automation over there, right, Kevin?
Absolutely. And that's where I really think a lot of the benefits that I've seen and that I've heard with all of our mutual customers is giving them that single tool to work out of that they're most comfortable with, that that Elastic case, and from there being able to stay within the case, replay the data while interacting in the case, getting that real-time update and information sent back from Cribl, kicking off additional searches or enrichment back in Elastic. It's really kind of that simplistic view, but still having all of the context and ability to go and do further investigation with a click of a button, and providing things like those maps, the data concepts, and then again that visualization aspect. And if we think of the improvements around operational and efficiency, and I guess the three things to take away from today's call is Cribl is going to handle that data management, the comprehensive analytics and IT for IT and security teams. Elastic being that modern AI-driven SIM, allowing you to continuously capture those cyber threats, do analytics, detection, and remediation on those alerts that are coming in. And then Tines being that automation engine in the background, allowing you to know that you have those smart, secure workflows built for your platform and for your security teams, but then also, again, thinking how you can extend that automation out beyond just security and IT, and allowing others within the organization to benefit from all three tools, and using Tines as a way to kind of spearhead and kick those searches and replays off. So for some of the resources for after today's call is we're going to go ahead and share out the Tines, Elastic, and Cribl data sheet, providing some more detail on all three tools and how they'll work together and complement each other. There's also a really nice step-by-step guide on how you can migrate from some of those legacy SOARs and platforms that are out there today over to Tines. You do have the access and ability to sign up for the Cribl Cloud account to start streaming all of your data or check, at the Cribl sandbox. And then there's also a really, really nice Elastic use case for security analytics that we'll share together with you afterwards. And then that automation story that I ran through using Tines, Elastic, and Cribl in conjunction, that'll be available within the Tines story library. If you just search Elastic and Cribl, that'll be one of the top searches that pops up. So that way you can one-click import that into your Tines account, and then from there set up the credentials for Elastic and Cribl and be up and running within about 10-15 minutes. So with that, I want to thanks everyone for listening today, and appreciate you all taking the time to show up, learn from Igor, learn from Paul, and listen to me run through our presentation today. So just want to open it up now for any particular questions, anything from the audience on Cribl, Elastic, and Tines, and that better together story for all three. So one question that we do have, and I'll open this up, is it's a question for me. Can we save, has Tines begun the FedRAMP process to support USG clients? So we are in the process of understanding and identifying what work needs to go into that. So we are aware some U.S. government clients need FedRAMP or want FedRAMP. One of the benefits of Tines is you also have the ability to run Tines within a self-hosted environment. We have a number of customers that have deployed Tines within Azure, GCP, AWS, and then air-gap those environments as well, and still get the benefits of automation from Tines and work with all those different tools that might be in your stack. Another question that we have, and I'll open this up to you, Igor, and you, Paul. What strategies should be leveraged to future-proof security infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. I will start. This is very important because security infrastructure constantly changes. And it's very important to make sure that you are not investing excessively heavily into proprietary technologies. Think about the tools that you use, like, for example, with Elastic Security and Elastic Common Schema that is open sourced. Think about Cribl that allows you to send data in non-proprietary formats, allow you to either reduce or completely eliminate proprietary agents or reliance on those agents. And the same with Tines as well. So make sure that your strategy is not heavily relying on proprietary vendor technologies.
Yeah, well said, Igor. I think that right there really sets the tone. I think another piece from my perspective of, like, when I think about future proofing of the security infrastructure is, again, going back, I don't know why I'm like stuck on this, but it's like I find a lot of people do a fantastic job like day one or day zero on defining a lot of whether it's flows or processes or any of the other pieces, and it just kind of gets statically set. We're not revisiting, we're not going back and spending a little time digging into that and saying what's grown, what's changed. Because realizing it's not just the threats that are out there, but it's also within your organization. If your businesses are growing and obviously changing and evolving, be that upscaling or downscaling, your scope is constantly evolving, which means you are needing to stay on top of and continue to focus. And going with, like what Igor was just saying, something that's more proprietary is going to be a difficult uphill battle of trying to go through that. Whereas with what we're dealing with, what we're talking about here in this kind of solution, it opens up your organization for a lot more ease of use, ease of functionality, and ease of adjusting that over time. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think for Tines, whether it's, a new process being, up or being created, a current process being updated, the ability to continue to have the main story running in production, receiving things from Elastic, from Cribl, and then the ability to add on, utilizing, that test mode that we had walked through, or even our change control process, where you can make modifications to a workflow, as the infrastructure changes, as new things come online, the ability to make those quick changes without interrupting what's actually running in the background, but still get the benefits of those updates and push those in the traditional review process before going live, I think is something that's hugely beneficial. One of the other questions that came in, and I'll open it up to all three of us, is what are the benefits for a security team using a stack like Tines, Cribl, and Elastic versus a traditional platform or a traditional SOAR platform?
Yeah, I can jump in here. So kind of taking off my Cribl hat and thinking from my previous experience. First of all, Tines, Cribl, and Elastic is something that most organizations would have in their environment in some shape or form. So automation, analytics, and data pipeline or data management solution. So it's not necessarily comparing it to just a traditional legacy SOAR platform. From automation perspective, working with some traditional or legacy SOAR platforms, it's more about kind of ease of use and time to value, right? So sounds a little bit too marketing, but realistically, try it out and you will see the difference pretty quickly, how much easier it is to build and operate automation with Tines in comparison to most of other SOAR solutions out there.
Yeah. I keep tagging into Igor, but Igor and I have worked together in the past, but we also, have a lot of commonality in terms of our thought process. I guess one thing that I love to circle back, and it's interesting, Kevin, you were showing in the demo how out of the box you've got, integrations with Cribl and integrations with Elastic. Well, similarly, we've spent the time and effort to make the integrations with, Elastic has with Cribl as well as with Tines. So in other words, what I've seen traditionally is a lot of the SOAR platforms are a heavy platform, meaning, hey, here's a nice foundation, go build. And I'm coming, from this perspective of a lot of people just don't have the time, especially in security, to go off and build these things. So giving something where out of the box, it's click and instantly now you're integrated. Click and you've got, like you were showing, a story, or click and now we've got a lot of information automatically helping them day one. Just accelerates that mean time to resolution and remediation, right?
Yep.
So
yeah, no, I mean, there's obviously a lot of the organizations out there that are that legacy SOAR. You go look for an inspiration or a way to connect to a tool, and a lot of the times it's pre-built connector. You may have all the endpoints. If there was a recent version change or update, it might take some time to get those endpoints up to date. With Tines, you have not only the benefit of all of these stories that are already pre-configured. Here, if we take a look at some of the Elastic ones, there's 2 pages worth. But you also have, to Paul's point, you may not always have the time to start fresh and go and find any particular way or documentation on how to get things configured. And one of the things I always like to show and highlight is if I go to the Tines API docs, any doc that has a curl command, you're able to get up and running and create those yourselves. So if I want to create a new action here, I can come down, I can take a look at this curl command, copy that curl command, go directly into my Tines story. From there, I can paste it, and then I'm immediately up and running with all the relevant details. The only thing that I would need to configure, if I haven't already configured it, is that API key to get up and running. And then from there, I can go ahead, I can run this, create that action, and then be working and adding new integrations very quickly, saving these as additional templates for others to make use of. And then within that action library here, under those private templates, you can make them visible to just your team, make them visible to the entire Tines tenant, so other users can benefit from that. And then there's always the ability, whether it's in the story library or even new action templates that are needed, you can always go ahead and submit a story or an idea that'll come directly to our team. We'll review it. We'll get it published. I know if I go into Cribl, Igor actually created one of the Cribl stories for us here, which is this conducting an IP search using Cribl. So, it's not just, Tines doing a lot of the work. It's also the community of Tines, of Elastic, and of Cribl, and users and customers contributing to this story library, as well as all of these different action templates and different products and new tools that are becoming available in the market. Adding those in and making it extremely straightforward to connect and start building and creating your automations. One last question that's come in: what key metrics should be used to measure the effectiveness of automation? I can kick this off if that's all right, and then I'll hand it back over to you, Paul, and you, Igor. So within Tines specifically, one of the ways that I always recommend folks go ahead and start realizing the value as well as the benefit of automation. At the end of the day, people always want to understand ROI and then what that time saved metric might actually look like, doing this via automation versus somebody manually creating that case and creating it in various different ways. So each time you select a particular action, you have the ability to go into this status section within the right-hand admin console to build. And from here, you can specify a time value metric. So here you have the ability to say, linking an alert to a case and creating the, cursory information before we start gathering and going through the various systems to update that case. You can specify how long that might take. So maybe creating a case is very straightforward. You can create that, say in 1 minute. But going through and querying Elasticsearch, creating the additional jobs in Cribl, and really going and doing a thorough job of analysis and enrichment, that might take an extra 15, 20 minutes. So you can go ahead and you can select all of the additional actions and put those time saved metric values in. And then from there, once this story is in production and it's running end to end, you'll have the ability to generate those reports directly in Tines, understand immediately from that first inflection point when that alert comes in, all the intel and enrichment information that's gathered and put into that case, how much time is actually saved from that. And then from there, you can start to break out and understand, okay, now if we look at the remediation or the isolation aspect, here we're doing something, we're creating that case, we're immediately allowing the analyst to go ahead and isolate that host. But maybe we want to, introduce other ways to, notify the user, hey, we received this alert, it's on your device, do you recognize this behavior? And then start to interact with the users within the organization to not just start isolating immediately, but get confirmation and understanding, why did this IP address log in from an unknown VPN or a different location that we're not used to seeing, and then add that layer of context, but also human involvement to get the information and then the responses that we're looking for before we isolate that host, because maybe that host doesn't warrant isolation at that point in time. Paul, Igor, I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on the effectiveness of automation and how you measure it or how you've seen customers measure it.
I think sorry, there's something with my audio. So with Kevin, what you mentioned, definitely you covered it very well, but I just want to double down on one other thing. So definitely measuring the effectiveness is very important because especially for anyone who is not building business cases on a regular basis, having this number in front of your management, your executives is very important. That's how you justify the automation piece to begin with. But when you do this, be conservative with your estimates, because the more confident you are that those estimates are at least this or potentially much, much more, so the easier it is to kind of confidently prove to your management and executives the savings and justify the further investment into automation.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we've always talked about time and money, right? And money, is time, and it's great metrics in front of it. I think one of the other metrics that a lot of times gets maybe overlooked, and I know it's hard because it's hard to measure. It's a very, very subjective, but it's things like risk and impact to the business,
Yep.
and ultimately being able to find a way to capture that, or even show that in a way. Again, it's realizing that if I manually do this, like how do you measure human error? How do you measure when I missed something, or maybe I didn't properly execute a command? If this becomes a repetitive process, the result should be that, this becomes consistent, it becomes quality, it becomes something that mitigates a risk of a human error mistake. On the other side, yes, I know there's a lot of people that instantly come up and go, but what about the human error whenever I'm building this? And it's like, that's what the testing's for. That's why I loved the fact that you went in and you're like, hey, this is why we test. This is why we iterate and verify and validate. But that's the beauty of this, right? You're getting visualizing of that process. Whereas if I went off and I pivoted off into, I don't know, you went off into some other area and I started running things, you don't know what I did. You don't know what the results were, and you don't know what commands I had. So we can't pick up on what failed or what happened outside and away from this. I'm getting visualization here, and I'm sure that there's a way that I keep thinking about the fact that I'm sure we can absolutely bring over some of the logs, some of the information and the data out of Tines to iterate and show, these processes have been, iterating over and over and over again successfully with results that are driving and reducing a lot of the risk, right? So, yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, definitely another follow-on topic for the next webinar. But yeah, with that, want to again thank everyone for the time today. Igor, Paul, thank you very much for taking the time to join me today on today's presentation. Again, on kind of the house cleaning things, we'll send those resources over with the blog post, Tines story, the Cribl Cloud account, so everyone can start getting use of all three of the tools and how they can work efficiently for you all. So thank you again, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it.